Hi, RBC. Today I've got a thought about the resurrection of Jesus Christ, a little passage from the last chapter of Luke's Gospel, Luke 24, and I even find this little passage quite humorous and also very comforting. In Luke 24 it says, "As they were talking about these things, Jesus himself stood among them and said to them, 'Peace to you.' But they were startled and frightened and thought they saw a spirit," or you could translate that they thought they saw a ghost. And he said to them, "Why are you troubled, and why do doubts arise in your hearts? See my hands and my feet. It is I myself. Touch me," he says, "touch me, and see. For a spirit does not have flesh and bones, as you see that I have." And when he had said this, he showed them his hands and his feet. And while they were still disbelieving for joy and marveling at him, he said to them, "Have you anything here to eat?" And they gave him a piece of broiled fish, and he took it and ate it before them. Let me just make a brief comment about the first thing that Jesus says and the last thing that Jesus says in this charming little vignette. The first thing that he says is, "Peace to you." Now, these are the disciples who ran away, tucked their tail between their legs and took off when Jesus needed them most. And when Jesus appears to them, what he says is, "Peace." He could have shamed them. He could have said, "Why did you abandon me?" He could have scolded them and sort of wagged his finger at them and said, "You guys really should have known better, and I taught you better than that." But instead of any of that, he says peace. Because the point is, the death and resurrection of Jesus brings us peace. A peace that is unshakable, a peace that is unbreakable, a peace that the world and even we ourselves on our worst day can't steal from ourselves, because it's the peace that God gives. Romans 8, "There is therefore now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus, for the law of the Spirit of life in Christ Jesus has set you free from the law of sin and death." The resurrection of Jesus Christ gives us peace with God because we have no fear of condemnation. And the resurrection of Jesus Christ gives us peace even because it delivers us from the fear of death. That's the first thing that he says. But let me show you the last thing that he says. He basically says in verse 41, "Hey guys, you have a snack for me?" He says, "Have you anything here to eat?" That is so normal. And in this context, it's strikingly strange that the resurrected Son of God appearing to his disciples says, "Hey, you guys have a snack you could hand me?" You say, what was he doing? Well, I think what he was doing is making that point that he was making in verse 39, just above, where he says, "Don't you see my hands? Don't you see my flesh? Don't you see that I'm not a ghost?" What he's saying to them is, I'm not a wish fulfillment. I'm not some kind of apparition that your confirmation bias is now making you see because you want to see me. He's forcing the point by this simple act of eating, and I can't help but think there was a gleam of humor in his eye and even a smile on his lips as he chomped on that fish and as he swallowed it, because he was making the point that the peace that you now have is as real as this food that's going down this throat right now. It is an unbreakable, unlosable peace that is as real as the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead. And so, RBC, as you're tracking with me here, the point for us is that we have this kind of confidence. Not a sort of bluster that we draw from within ourselves, but a confidence in the resurrection of Jesus Christ that we've been delivered from condemnation, we've been delivered from the fear of death, and now we can share the peace of Christ with those around us, especially at this time when they need it most.